Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. So here is what practically nobody is talking about right now, at least not in the right way. Google and Anthropic just dropped two of the most absolutely massive AI model updates of the entire year. And they did it, literally, within days of each other. Now, if you've been following the tech media lately, you've probably noticed they've been framing this whole thing as just another simple head-to-head battle. You know the drill, right? Who scores higher on the benchmark? Who wins the coding test? It's like a sporting event. But honestly, as we look at the reality of these updates, treating this like a traditional tech shootout is just the completely wrong way to evaluate what actually just happened. Because, well, asking who wins the benchmark fundamentally misunderstands the landscape we're in right now. Google and Anthropic, they aren't competing for the same future here, and they certainly aren't building the same thing anymore. The reason standard testing metrics are completely failing to capture the significance of these releases is that those tests just assume a one-size-fits-all AI race. But the source data clearly shows a massive fork in the road for how these models are actually designed to be deployed in the real world. And that core divergence really boils down to this. On one side, we have Gemini 3.5 Flash. Google's goal with this model is total ubiquity. It wants to be absolutely everywhere in your ecosystem. It needs to be fast, it needs to be incredibly cheap, and it needs to be natively multimodal, literally wired straight into your phone and your video editor. But on the other side, we have Claude Opus 4.8. Anthropic's primary objective isn't to be everywhere, it's absolute bulletproof trustworthiness. This is the model designed specifically for high-stakes environments. You know, for those moments where being wrong simply isn't an option. Section 1. Gemini 3.5 Flash, AI at scale. Okay, let's dive into this. Google's newest entry in the speed and cost-focused Flash series is basically the ultimate embodiment of their strategy to provide AI at true infrastructure scale. And what's wild is, it's not just about bumping up the speed slightly. It's about fundamentally changing how developers actually interact with compute resources. The headline feature of Gemini 3.5 Flash isn't raw speed. It's this entirely new concept called thinking levels. Think of this like a configurable dimmer switch for intelligence. Developers can now explicitly adjust the reasoning depth of the model versus the compute cost for any given task. So if you have a really high-stakes query, you crank up the reasoning. But if it's just a routine task, you dial it back and save compute. This is absolutely huge because it means developers building at scale no longer have to pay for a PhD-level answer just to process a simple "what's the weather today" request. And beyond that dimmer switch, Google has rolled out some massive infrastructure updates alongside 3.5 Flash. They are leaning incredibly hard into agent infrastructure. What that means is the model is now optimized for long-running enterprise terminal tasks, complex tool calling, and planning out multiple steps. We are way beyond a simple chatbot here. Furthermore, we've got the VO integration. Gemini 3.5 Flash is now part of a full multimodal stack that integrates VO for generating up to 4K video directly inside Google's ecosystem. So we're talking seamless connections with AI Studio, Workspace, and Android, the whole shebang. And the numbers beautifully illustrate what is arguably Google's absolute nuclear weapon in this space, and that's cost. Recent reporting shows Google is drastically undercutting its flagship competitors on price per token, while somehow maintaining highly competitive benchmark performance. To put that into perspective, at a massive scale, we're talking millions of requests. This isn't just a marginal savings on your cloud bill. It is a fundamental category difference that makes entirely new, previously impossible business models a reality. Section 2. Claude Opus 4.8, AI you trust. Now let's pivot over to Anthropic. If Google is all about doing everything everywhere all at once, Anthropic's Opus 4.8 is very much a do the hard things better update. It brings three major upgrades to the table, and they are heavily focused on precision and reliability for enterprise environments. First up is honesty and self-correction. Anthropic reports a staggering 4 times improvement in the model's ability to recognize uncertainty and basically identify its own flaws. This prevents confident hallucinations, which, let's be real, is pretty much the most dangerous failure mode in production AI today. Second is coding quality. The benchmarks here aren't just for, simple toy problems. They show exceptional strength in messy, real-world refactoring and complex production debugging. And third, they introduce something incredibly ambitious called dynamic workflows.
Let's actually look a bit closer at dynamic workflows, because this is Anthropic's answer to tasks that are just way too big for a single conversation thread. Claude Opus 4.8 now has the ability to spawn its own sub-agents. Think of it like hiring a team of virtual specialists. It can run parallel tasks simultaneously, have those agents verify each other's outputs, and coordinate massive, large-scale research processes. So instead of just relying on a single prompt and response, you're essentially building an entire network of cooperating sub-agents, all managed by Claude, to tackle ridiculously complex operations.
Section 3. Real-world AI workflows. Now, what's really interesting about mapping these theoretical differences is seeing how they actually play out step by step in the real world. Because, understanding a spec sheet is one thing, but seeing how these models dictate the way you actually work day to day, that's where the real value is. Let's walk through two entirely different real-world pipelines. Here is a complete video production pipeline built entirely inside Google's ecosystem using Gemini 3.5 Flash. Step 1, you validate an idea using live web search data right inside the model to check trending search volume. Step 2, you generate the script, but right here you set the thinking levels to high so it deeply checks its own logic and flow. Step 3, it generates a detailed shot-by-shot storyboard prompt. Step 4, you push those exact descriptions directly into VO via the API for glorious 4K video output. And finally, Step 5, you export the whole package straight into Workspace. Total time? Less than an hour with absolutely zero external tools required. Just boom, done.
Now contrast that highly integrated media pipeline with a rigorous technical research workflow using Claude Opus 4.8. Step 1, you assign Claude as the master agent for a deep, complex technical brief. Step 2, it uses dynamic workflows to spawn parallel sub-agents, so maybe one for background research, one checking for accuracy, and one specifically looking for counter-arguments. Step 3 is absolutely vital, uncertainty flagging. Instead of just making things up to sound smart, Claude will explicitly flag exactly where it lacks confidence, so you know exactly what needs human verification. Step 4, it generates and self-critiques any required code. And Step 5, it exports everything as beautiful, structured Markdown. It's not flashy, it's not making 4K videos, but it's methodical, it's rigorous, and most importantly, it's trustworthy.
Section 4. Limits and trade-offs.
But of course, there's no hype cycle here on the explainer. It's time to be completely honest about what these models cannot do, because both approaches come with significant constraints that you really need to be aware of before you decide to integrate them into your daily operations or your company's tech stack. Let's lay out their constraints side by side. For Gemini, that brilliant thinking levels feature, well, it places a massive configuration burden on the developer. Set it wrong, and you either overpay for compute or you get incredibly shallow answers. Also, all that multimodal magic really requires you to be fully locked into the Google ecosystem. If your stack runs on AWS, it's going to be a headache. And ultimately, Flash does take shortcuts on deep, sustained reasoning. Now, on the Claude side, the constraints are just as real. You are paying a premium cost for a slower, much more methodical model. The multi-agent workflow, it's amazing, but it's very new and needs really rigorous edge case testing before you put it into production use. And finally, Claude is zero native video creation. It completely requires external tools if you need media output.
So the crucial point is this. When you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, these aren't competing products in the traditional sense at all. They are entirely competing visions of what AI should be. Google's strategy is to be the infrastructure default layer, basically the affordable, everyday on-ramp into a universal ecosystem. Anthropic's strategy is to be the ultimate arbiter of trust. They want to be the model you reach for when a mistake carries actual real-world consequences. So what does this all mean for the future of how we work? It means the best teams, the ones looking ahead to 2026 and beyond, they aren't picking just one. They're using both. Smart builders are going to route their workflows dynamically. They'll use Gemini Flash for the fast, cheap, multimodal tasks at scale, and then call on Claude Opus for the high-stakes reasoning that absolutely, definitively must be correct. It's really about matching the cognitive engine to the specific requirement of the task at hand.
Which brings us to the final consideration for your own projects. I want you to really think about this question. Consider your own risk tolerance, and please drop your answer in the comments below. Which failure mode scares you more? An AI that's slow and expensive, or an AI that's fast and wrong? Because your honest answer to that question is going to tell you exactly which model belongs right at the center of your stack. If this breakdown brought some clarity to these massive updates, make sure to subscribe for more deep technical analysis where we completely cut through the hype and focus on what actually matters. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep building smart.